Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the University of New England's NAIDOC Acknowledgement Ceremony for 2022. This year's theme, Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up. My name is Danielle, and I'm a proud descendant of the Gamilaroi and Anawan people. I'm a former track student and a current criminology student here at UNE. I'm an employee of the university and also a member of the team at Oorala. I'd now like to welcome Uncle Steve Witters to give our welcome to country today.
Ketchera and Danya, as ladies and gentlemen, and girls and boys. Dangana daga, dangandaga wanga. Yaga anawan kuna. Yaga anawan oyina. Hinja anawan kunda. Yaka yina kuna rakinya. Inja nyambika kuna, nyambika Oorala. Altala rakinya inja kuna, natame runyara nyambaka kuna. I've just welcomed you all to the land of my ancestors, the Anawan people, who are the traditional custodians of the land that we sit on today. I acknowledge too that their stories of elders past, of elders present, and those who will follow in their steps are embedded in this land and has been for many thousands of years. Their stories, their culture, their music, their dance, their food, their protection of animals, their ecology, their environmental aspects, the astronomy. They were scientists, they were land managers. They knew the way of the land, they knew the way of the water. They understood that water was the blood of the earth, and that if the water didn't run, the land died. They protected animals through a totemic system, where you looked after those animals that were delegated to you. They had a good system of governance and leadership, one that has been used for thousands of years and that has ensured survival to be the oldest living culture in the world, to be part of the oldest living culture in the world. The idea of a welcome to country is one that is done in the spirit of friendship and the spirit of goodwill, the spirit of peace, and in the spirit of harmony. Because Aboriginal Australia was multicultural before any white man come here. We've got over 300 different countries and 300 different language groups as well. Many of those that are the same language groups. When you moved from one country to another, you had to be welcomed, and it was done in a respectful and a peaceful way. And you had to state your intent, what you were here for, and you were looked after while you were on that land until you got to the other border. For the original inhabitants, it was a cycle of life, from fire to death to regrowth, from dry, desiccated yellow to lush, succulent green. They, I mean all the Aboriginal people of this land, they were part of the regenerative process. They thought in cycles. They thought in circles. They were part of the land, and the land was part of them. Then they encountered a people who thought in straight lines. These strangers, they had linear stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Anawan storytellers and storytellers from all across Australia in different countries, but particularly Anawan, they could tell you of Booloominbah, the high country from where the waters came. They spoke of Alpawan, the low country where the waters linger. And then there's the violently broken country around us where the waters fall. And that geographical aspect marks the beginning and the end of Anawan country. Because all countries, all Aboriginal countries across Australia were devised on the geographical and the topographical aspects of the land. So when the land formation changed, so did the custodianship of the land. For example, where we are, the high country, and Booloominbah, by the way, is Mount Javal, Alpawan is Jemeric Creek, and Oorala is the waterfalls to the east of here. But we're the high country, we're the snow country, we're the snow people. Our ancestors have many stories of this land. But where the geography changes, so does the custodianship of the land. For example, if you drive from here to Tamworth, the top of the Moonbis is the beginning and the end of Anawan country. When you go down to the plains, you come on to Kamilaroi country. Gomeroi people are the plains people. Not plain, the people of the plains. And if you go east, you come to many other countries. The Biripi, the Dungari, the Gumbanga, the Bunjalung, the Yagal, the Yambura, all different countries all along the coast. And their boundaries are defined by the change in land, like the escarpment between here and Dorrigo, the Clarence River, the Macleay River, all of which had Aboriginal names, the Nambucca River, they're all the boundaries. So when you cross a river or when you cross land, you're in a different country. Today I'm doing as a token of goodwill and gesture of friendship, welcome you all here, not just Aboriginal people, but all of us. Every one of us as Australians, because we all share this land together. We are focused on the future. We're facing the challenges that the world is facing. We're facing all of them together as Australians. So my fellow Australians, fellow Armadalians, fellow New Englanders, visitors to this country, whether you're from overseas or from outside of this area. Is it somebody telling me time's up or what? Welcome. Welcome in the name of spirit of goodwill and in the name of peace as we come to celebrate and acknowledge another NAIDOC week, a NAIDOC week which Danielle called the theme, get up, stand up and show up. Because I believe that the world is run by people who actually show up. And I think somebody else reckons that too. But it is, and it's a call. It's a call for unity. It's a call for leadership. And it's a call to say, well, we as Australians, we need to share what we've got, particularly Aboriginal people. We share it with our fellow Australians in the spirit of goodwill. Welcome, everybody. Oitika Lana Pura. Let's talk soon. And welcome. Thank you.
I would now like to invite our CEO and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Bridget Haywood, to say a few words.
Good morning. I hope you can all hear me. And first of all, can I thank Steve and the staff from Oorala for enabling this event to happen. It's deeply important in the business cycle of the university that we engage and have the conversations that need to be had and to recognise the activities that support the widest possible engagement. So first of all, I acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Anawan peoples, that we recognise that they have acted in guardianship and stewardship through their practices of science, environmental guardianship, people stewardship, history, culture, a wide range of engaged activities over many, many centuries, and we still benefit from those associations today. Can I acknowledge the contributions of elders past, present and emerging, and express the gratitude of the university for being given the opportunity to conduct its business in a collaborative and sharing environment that is about the well-being of all of those who come under the roof of the University of New England. Steve talked about the significance of place and how we are all tethered by the stories to the places and to the communities defined by place. I think this year for NAIDOC Week, we are encouraged to think about the significance also of verbs. It is the doing that matters. As a knowledge house, we can think, we can have thought leadership conversations, we can look at history, we can review culture, and we can argue the positive merits of participation. We can frame a conversation about the value of diversity, the opportunities which full collaborative engagement offers. But it is the deeds, it is the actions, it is the intent that will define us. And for me, this week is about celebrating a cultural connection, but it's one for which we must be intentful. It talks about standing up and being present. It talks about shouting out and doing the right thing. It talks about using verbs as instruments of action so that we not only recognise the raising of a flag, the sharing of stories, and the desire to be part of an open, diverse, collaborative community, but all of those are bundled together in a series of verbs, a series of doings. So it's fantastic that the team have acted to create this event and all that it signifies. It is amazing that a community will come together in different ways this week through the UNE community, and that they will take action to both celebrate NAIDOC Week, but to make this week a beacon, a lighthouse, a landmark for activities that should actually take place 24/7, 365 days of the year. So today is a celebration of our commitment to the verbs, to the doing. That it's not enough that we recognise, we should do that openly, freely and loudly, but that we engage as actively as possible to be living citizens for a modern Australia, for one where engagement matters deeply, where history has a deep, meaningful and purposeful place. But Australia is also a country, and Stephen has just given one window on it. It's a country that brings many histories together. Our great challenge is to weave the story, another doing, weaving, the weaving of those stories together so that we can all be present in a positive future where everyone has a voice and where everyone has a place in the way that Steve articulated it, but also everyone can have a future that is meaningful. So my message to myself and to the staff of the university, and from the university to the wider communities that we support and are very proud to be a part of, it is the verbs that are going to matter this week and the verbs that will matter taking us forward. So can I first of all express my thanks that you've all stood up here, you've done a verb, you've stood up on a very cold morning in New England, and you've taken the time to step away from the other verb of your life, the busy doing verbs of work, to stand here today and share in the commitment that NAIDOC Week is important, but it is but a flag to how we should be all of the time. So on behalf of the university, can I thank Oorala? Can I thank the young people of Yamgoanga for joining us this morning? Hello, everybody. Can I thank all the staff who made this morning possible? These things always require that somebody makes a lot of effort. May I thank you again for your verb, for making the effort. Can I thank Steve for joining us and being deeply eloquent in your sharing of knowledge and your recognition of place? And can I thank all the staff for joining us this morning and celebrating an important date, but an important place and an important action for this community. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite our student guest speaker, a PhD student here at UNE who has completed a Bachelor of Zoology with honours and is also an employee of the Oorala Aboriginal Centre, Mr. Kaya Everly.
Everyone can hear me? Great. Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. I will also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, all the elders past, present and future. Please excuse me as I would like to quickly introduce myself in Gatung, the native language of the Worimi and neighbouring peoples. Barabaitia Kaya Everly, Natua Worimi Guri. I'm Kaya Everly. I'm a Worimi man. Today I've been asked to speak on this year's NAIDOC theme from a student's perspective. As a current PhD student and having completed my bachelor's with honours here at UNE, I figured I could at least share my thoughts. To start with, I recognise that each person's experiences are what shape and inform their outlooks on life and how they interact with this world. Each of those are unique for each and every person. This and that studying itself does not occur in its own isolated bubble. Our life experiences before and alongside our studies are shaped by those experiences. I'm a proud Worimi man, but for a long time I've been a privately proud Worimi man. I grew up in Gloucester, which is a relatively small country town at the bottom of the mountain, and I quickly learned that being Aboriginal was not always met with the kindness and excitement that I expected as a child. I started primary school in the year 2000, where I was bullied, chased, called names, and even whipped with skipping ropes because I am Aboriginal. This influenced my approach to life early on: keep my head down, power on through, and hope for a better future. I kept up this attitude, which kept me safe, through to me moving to Armidale in 2014 to start university, where, as an adult and starting university, I thought it would be good to try and open up myself again. My first experience was at Centrelink, where I was denied ab study and put onto the mainstream youth allowance, for reasons that I still do not understand. I initially thought that there was a simple confusion or miscommunication that had occurred, in which I simply stated, I am Aboriginal. The clerk also simply said, it's the same amount, so it doesn't matter. Whilst that amount of money was the same, that wasn't the point. In that moment, I was denied who I am. Hurt, confused, and reliant on those financial payments, I didn't argue. My second experience was with a friend group that I had made in my undergrad. We were all learning about each other, so naturally it came up that I was Aboriginal. Initially, they thought I was pulling their collective leg, which I was not hurt by. I am quite of fair complexion, and this doesn't surprise me half the time. What I was not prepared for was them to continue not believing me when I said that I wasn't joking. It got to the point where, in a bout of frustration, I showed them my confirmation of Aboriginality. Here is the physical proof that I am Aboriginal. Most conceded, but again, one thought it was a Photoshop document. When it came time for me to start interacting with the Oorala Aboriginal Centre, I was scared. I was not ready to be heard again, denied who I was, so I didn't engage. I chose to be safe, privately proud of who I am, but not publicly talking about it. My entire bachelor's and honours, I kept my head down and powered on through it. It was only this year, in the final year of my candidature, I realised I couldn't keep going about life the way that I had. I've spent a lot of time this year reflecting after the sudden and unexpected deaths of my brother and sister. Simply, life is too short to only hope for a better future. I made the choice to become an active agent in this world. I've always loved the environment, loved my community, and loved helping and educating others. So I'm putting myself out there, risking hurt and humiliation now. I enrolled myself and my father into a Gatang language school, constantly making mistakes, trying to encourage others it's a safe place to learn, and that there is no shame in learning. I finally got in touch with the team here at Oorala, something I should have done long ago. My own fear kept me from a wonderful community here. I'm now working with Oorala as both a tutor and a casual student engagement assistant, actively helping new and concurrent students in their own studies. It may not seem like I spoke much about the student experience and this year's theme and how it relates. That is because I was the example of not standing up. So by sharing these experiences today, I'm trying to focus on the truth-telling and the calling out of racism. This is me getting up, standing up, showing up in my own way and hoping it encourages others to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaya. That was great. Our guest speaker today is a local Anawan woman who has an extensive background as a student and various education experiences. Although her first graduation was right here with UNE, our guest speaker has previously worked at the Oorala Aboriginal Centre and is currently employed with the Aboriginal Services Unit, based at the Armidale Courthouse as an Aboriginal Client Community Support Officer who is extremely passionate about their community. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest speaker from the community, Fiona Lovelock.
I'm close enough. Given this year's NAIDOC theme is Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up, I almost got my introduction messed up because the weather wants to be warm today, believe it or not, because people are so brave to come up here each year and brave the cold up here on the hill. Out of respect to our elders, I might just put it down a little bit if I can. Out of respect to our elders who do not like the use of the word Indigenous, I will use First Nations people or Aboriginal throughout my speech today to respectfully encompass Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and identities. One of the first things you read when you go to the official NAIDOC page is we all must continue to get up, stand up, show up for systemic change and keep rallying around our mob, our elders and our communities. From the frontier wars and our earliest resistance fighters to our communities fighting for change today, we continue to show up, and we do. Whether it's seeking cultural and heritage protection, constitutional change, treaties, calling out racism or showing up for community, we must do it together. Given that we are standing on the grounds of what some may consider the ultimate educational institution, let's talk about education too. Over the years, I've noticed a tendency to not use certain words or to mention certain things like land rights, culture and deep spiritual connections, racism, discriminations and the effects of them, and the importance of opportunities that will assist our people, like access to quality health, education and housing. These needs did not go away, they are just not spoken about in plain and simple terms anymore. Most of our national celebrations encourage people to reflect on the Australian principle of a fair go and to consider the inequalities still experienced by First Nations peoples in Australia. I believe our previous Prime Minister Scott Morrison's mantra about getting a fair go was very conditional and fueled the push towards mainstreaming all of us. He often said a fair go for those who have a go. Well, for First Nations people who have had to live through so many policies of protection, assimilation and discrimination, a fair go was never in our sights. It was always a struggle, always a fight for a fair go. Let's hope our new government will show up for us this time round. We are still demanding equity. We are still wanting equality. We want to live free from bias and oppression, and we want social justice, peace, and genuine security, just like everyone. Nothing in isolation will create the change we need to truly live together. I don't know if you're hearing me okay. I feel I'm dripping down. Okay, good. So nothing in isolation will create the change we need to truly live together. That will take a whole of society approach and a huge effort to achieve. But we have to do it together. And it must be a genuine commitment by all of us to get up, stand up, show up, while supporting and securing institutional, structural, collaborative and cooperative reforms. And we need to move beyond just acknowledgement, good intentions, empty words, promises and hollow commitments. We don't need saving or anyone's missionary zeal. We need self-determination and equal rights. We are custodians of some of the most biological diverse territories in the world. We are responsible for a great deal of the world's linguistic and cultural diversity, and our traditional knowledge has been and continues to be an invaluable resource that benefits all of mankind. Without self-determination, it's not possible for us to fully overcome the legacy of colonisation and dispossession. We still, however, suffer racism and discrimination, marginalisation, extreme poverty and institutional violence. We are still being dispossessed of our traditional lands, and we are constantly being undermined. And our belief systems, cultures, language and way of life continue to be threatened. Do we really need to deserve to be dealing with these issues in 2022? We are doing the best we can, and we have some amazing work being done by our people who are working hard to revive and reclaim land, language and culture. The recent joint management agreement between the Anaiwan Land Council, Armidale Land Council and National Parks and Wildlife, that's sweet, with the handing back of, and excuse me if I don't pronounce this right, I've checked so many times, Booloominbah, which was previously Mount Yarrawick. Thanks to the advocacy, resilience and perseverance of the traditional owners, they are helping to protect our cultural heritage. The descendants of Frank Archibald, who are currently lobbying local council to have their ancestor King Bobby remembered in Armidale, should be supported and acknowledged. and the fantastic work being done by Nuwara Aboriginal Corporation with the recent buyback of nearly 600 acres of bushland, the largest patch of Anaiwan country reclaimed and owned outright by Anaiwan people with no strings attached, no government involvement. These are all proud achievements that should be acknowledged, supported and applauded. So how can we do more to support each other locally within our communities? There are a lot of good people doing lots of good things, and we should be showing up for them and standing up for them and getting involved. I was initially notified about this event via Facebook Messenger from a welcomed old work colleague and friend, which made me think about how we use social media. Social media platforms like Facebook for us oldies and the many platforms the younger generation use, there are a multitude. But one thing in common is that First Nations people around the world use them, and they have served as venues for staying connected, for political engagement and social activism, exposing injustices to the world and putting our communities on the global map for all to see. As much as I enjoy these platforms and find them very useful and fun at times, I would encourage local community members to physically return to community organisations to participate and support each other face to face. A huge part of our culture is how we interact with each other. The roles we are designated as part of a family unit and the roles we take on as part of the community in which we live. Each one of us is important and we need to hear what each other has to say. So get involved in your local organisations, support them and play your part however that may look. My paid work involves supporting Aboriginal adult offenders, victims and community while they're at court. My wish list is endless, but to keep it real and brief, I would like to see less of our people incarcerated, more of our people in jobs, less of our children in care and more of our parents and families being supported. There's a lot of work to do. Which brings me to the importance of education. Education can mean different things to different people. Some see the education system as classroom training, while others see it as a lifelong journey of life-changing experiences found outside a classroom. For today, I'm talking about classroom education. Having a good education is central to our economic, social and cultural development. A good education strongly determines our health, literacy, employment and social status and productivity in the world we live in now. We often expect state and territory governments, non-government education authorities and First Nation communities to work in collaboration to close the gap between outcomes of our Aboriginal students and non-Aboriginal students. However, all institutions have trends that move up and down, ebbing and flowing with the economy and demographic shifts. I think for us First Nations peoples, our needs are simple, yet delivery of what we need is complex, and those trends that remain stagnant are ever-present reminders of the work that still needs to be done. I think UNE do it well. I think Oorala do it even better in its support of our kids in schools and our young people who are entering university. I purposely make that distinction between the two. I believe when things are done for Aboriginal people by Aboriginal people, it just works. Our mature age learners and early school leavers are a largely neglected group. We should be supporting them also. Many of our local Aboriginal leaders and important people in my life were denied the opportunity of formal education purely because they were Aboriginal. Even in my generation, curriculum content and education policies and practice were never developed with us in mind, and the support we needed just wasn't there. Our old people were already intelligent, but many were not afforded the privilege to obtain a formal education. They fought for the right to be taught as mature age learners on top of everything else they fought so hard for. Courses like the Associate Diploma in Aboriginal Studies, Chris Stafford and Anne Eckerman are names that come to mind when I think back, and the General Certificate and Tertiary Prep courses offered through TAFE all those years ago assisted mature age learners and early school leavers to obtain their certificates, diplomas and eventually degrees. I don't see a lot of those types of courses offered locally the way they were when I was growing up, and they really did work. We do, however, have Oorala's entry pathways, tracks and ISP, and the support provided by Oorala staff, which is encouraging and much needed. But there is a lot more that we can do to close the gap in education. For me personally, I would like to explore the idea of locally run block release programs designed for mature age learners and early school leavers who may otherwise not go down the education path. University and TAFE attract students with different intentions and interests. One's hands-on and the other a stronghold of academic endeavours, but we can support both. We need culturally specific and appropriate alternative education programs for our people to get back into education through to completion. Much has changed in a good way, but we still need to help everyone over the line to make real change in our communities. I would never give a public speech without acknowledging our elders and leaders, and especially my parents, Bill and Vera Lovelock, and the many community members who have fought so hard for what we all have today. They paved the way for us, and we honour their struggles and achievements, acknowledge their failings and celebrate their victories. Through them, we will learn how to do it right. Our national celebrations like NAIDOC are not about attributing guilt to the current generation of Australian people, but if you are supportive of societal systems that produce and perpetuate inequalities for racial minorities, then you should feel somewhat guilty. Our traumatic history should not be spoken about in ways that soothes anyone's soul. While there is no precise prescription to eradicate racial injustice, a critical first step is a clear commitment to acknowledging your own implicit biases, as racism doesn't just show up in its most extreme form all the time. You should embrace the difficult conversations and uncomfortable truths with each other and demonstrate to us that our voices are being heard. I believe we can all work together side by side in all aspects of life if real respect, honour, integrity and trust is given. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Well, thank you everyone for joining in the celebrations here today. Also, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all with an invitation to attend the lunch at the Oorala Aboriginal Centre. If I could also remind everybody, we will be indoors throughout the lunch and we recommend that we continue to practice safe distance. Thank you.